if you're doing it just because you think that's the thing that you're supposed to do, you won't have the energy or the excitement or the enthusiasm.
Inspiring you to reach your goals and live your dream. This is the Keaton Nelson Show.
All righty, guys. Welcome back to the Keaton Nelson Show. I am so excited to have David Neagle here on the podcast. David, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to start off with like, hey, where are you from? What was life like when you were growing up? Because I think people think successful people just landed where they were, and that is not always the case. So how was it growing up, man?
Well, that was definitely not the case. I'm from Chicago. Growing up was very interesting. My parents split up when I was about 13 years old, and I was with my mom and my brother. We didn't have a whole lot of direction in life, and I mean, things were okay, but it was definitely not success. We were on the lower end of middle class. I quit high school when I was 17 years old. I decided to just work, and that's what I was doing, but I wasn't getting anywhere. And I got married and had a couple of kids, and I found out really fast that I had created a situation that required more responsibility than I had the ability to live up to. So woke up one morning and the car was repossessed. We ended up filing bankruptcy, had to leave our apartment in the middle of the night because they wouldn't let us out of our lease and we couldn't afford to live there. Had to move to a really low-end neighborhood about 60 miles away from where we were living. And I was driving a forklift. It was the only job that I could get. And I was struggling like crazy. And so that's in the day before the internet really had taken off. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm ever going to get out of this, I have to correct the decision that I made that wasn't good, which was quit high school. And I need to go back to school. But I didn't have the time or the money to do it. I was working 6.5 days a week and I had no money. And I didn't have any time. And so I began to work with my mindset just out of desperation, really out of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a real meltdown one night in the back of a trailer. And I was really having a meltdown. I had a terrible day. I was reprimanded twice before I started work. I couldn't figure out how to get out of this situation. It was just getting worse for a period of 2 years. And this voice in my head said, David, change your attitude. And I thought to myself, I have no idea why that would make any difference whatsoever. Like, what does my attitude have anything to do with skill set and where I'm working and how that's going to change this situation? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I started playing with it and I changed 3 things in my attitude. And within a month, I tripled my income. And I was so shocked by the change that happened in my life that I said, I got to figure out what I did. So I started studying. And one thing led, I started studying probably around 1993. And one of the first things that I did was I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, which kind of really changed my focus because I didn't know that there were that many positive people in the world, to be honest with you. It was like a huge wake-up call. I was exciting and exhilarating on one hand and terrifying on the other because I'm like, I don't belong here. But life kept getting better. And eventually I met Proctor around 1996. And I started my business in 1999. And it's just continued to grow from there. And it all started with changing my mindset and really understanding who I was, understanding business, understanding money, understanding basically everything. I mean, I literally had to change almost everything about my mindset from the way that I was raised in order to become successful. So it was a journey. It was a real journey.
Yeah, that's wild. So when you tripled your income in a month, how the heck did that happen? Were you driving the forklift then still?
Yeah.
How do you go from that to that? You know what I mean?
Exactly, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the same question that I had. So what happened was I would sit down every day for 2 years at lunch, and I would sit down with a pad of paper and a calculator, and I was trying to figure out how could I earn more money any way that I possibly could. And I tried all different kinds of things. Nothing panned out that well at all. And when I changed my attitude, I started seeing things differently. I didn't know that I was doing that at the time, by the way, but there was this guy that would come and visit our company twice a week. He would come on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and he drove a fuel truck. And his job was to fill the trucks that we had in the lot. Because what I worked for was an international food distributor. It was the largest in the country. And this guy would fill the trucks, and he would fill the refrigerated trailers with diesel fuel. And we used to make fun of him because he smelled like diesel fuel. He was either in the rain, or he was out there with the mosquitoes, or if it was 2 feet of snow and 20 below zero, it was Chicago, so we would get everything.
Yeah.
At least we were on the dock, right? So, but I got to know the guy over a 2-year period of time. And when I started to change my attitude, one day out of the blue, he said to me, "You don't want to stay here working here for the rest of your life, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't like it here at all." He said, "Why don't you come to work where I'm working?" And immediately my mind shut down, and I started making him wrong and making fun of him, and I thought he was an idiot. And the last question, and after I went through this little ramble that I was kind of teasing him, I said, "Besides that, Drew, how much money could you possibly be making driving that nasty ass truck?" And he said to me, "Well, last year I made 50,000, and that was in 1993, the beginning of 1993, or no, it was the end of 92, October of 92." He said, "Last year I made 50,000." And I'm like, "There's no way you made $50,000 doing this." And he said, "Well, next week when I come, I'll show you my pay stub." I'm like, "Okay, you do that. You do that," right? And I'm thinking this guy is just nuts. Like, there's no way. And I'm making 20 with all the overtime I could possibly work. I couldn't get past that number. So he comes next Tuesday, shows me his pay stub, and he wasn't kidding. So that shifted my mind a little bit, and I started asking him questions. I mean, I had to get past some real fears to do this, because I literally viewed what he did as driving a bomb. You know, he carried gas and diesel fuel in a truck. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I'm like, "How dangerous is that? You know, like, has anybody ever died doing that?" He goes, "Oh yeah. Last year, a guy rolled one over on I-65 in Indiana and burned to death." And I'm like, "And you want me to come work for you?"
Yeah,
right?
Sign me up, right?
Yeah. So I had to really think about it. And then there was this whole thing about, I would go to work for this company. It was Teamsters Union. If I went there, I would start at the bottom of the scale, right? You know, and if they had layoffs, I could get laid off for up to 7 months. And I got a family. How am I going to support them? So I had to really work through a lot of irrational fears, and some real ones in my mind. And I went to work there. I took the job 30 days later, and instantly my income tripled. And I thought to myself, here was the kicker. This was the thing. It even wasn't so much that my income tripled, although that really woke me up. But it was the idea that this opportunity had been around me for 2 years, and I didn't see it as an opportunity. And I recognized that that was a major issue. And I really associated that with the change in my mindset. Because what was not a possibility at all in my mind prior to this became a possibility, and I could see an opportunity, and I could step into it. So I thought, what else am I not seeing? Like, what else am I not seeing in my life? I had learned really quick that I had been raised in a way to see a life through a very extreme bias. And I really could not understand anything else, because I couldn't get away from the bias. I didn't even understand the bias that I was stuck in almost every area of my life. So I began to study, and slowly but surely I began to break out of it. I started working in that company as a truck driver. And when I left 7 years later, I was in charge of expanding that company across the country. And I never went back to school or anything. It was just all mindset and really, learning how to do business as I grew with that company. And then I left and I started my own business. I was so excited by what I learned. And I started helping people just for free on the side that would be asking me questions, because they saw the change. Some people were like, "What did you do?" They take me aside quietly, like, "Tell me what you did." And I would start to tell them, and they would start making changes, and they would have the same result. And I was like, damn it. Why doesn't everybody know about this? Like, I thought that I had just discovered the Holy Grail, and I was excited about it. And I went and I got mixed with people that knew what they were doing, and they taught me, and then I went out on my own.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I was just introduced to this stuff probably January, February this year. Beginning of this year, my company was losing $6,000 a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we went from like 25,000 a month. It was a relatively new company, by the way. And then we beginning of the year, we lost a bunch of big clients and stuff, probably people reevaluating what they're spending their money on and stuff. And to be honest with you, back then my service offering wasn't that good or sticky enough to keep people around, you know?
Yeah.
And I never thought that I'd be able to offer more. And you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Now, I hit my like 3-year goal last month or the month before.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like just for, it's like, I think it's 4x in 6 months. You know what I mean? Just very,
Yep.
very straightforward. And it, people don't, what do you say to the person who's like, mindset's woo-woo bullshit, you know, complete BS?
Well, the thing is that mindset's everything. It is very true that there's things that you have to do, right? Strategy wise in your
Sure.
business, structurally, marketing, sales, hiring team, training team, like all of that is absolutely correct. But the way you do any of that has to do with your mindset. It has to do with what you know, how you see the world, how you see, I mean, the beliefs that we're raised with around money alone are so horrific. They keep most people stuck broke their whole life because they just don't understand money. So when people say that, I ask them, who taught you that mindset is woo-woo? Because mindset's behind the greatest sports team, the greatest actors, the greatest actresses. It's Elon Musk, it's Michael Jordan, it's everybody in the world who's ever succeeded any great way. It's Amazon. It's, you know, that's all mindset. Those things play out in the actual changes that are made physically and structurally and through strategy in our life. But you have to be able to think your way through those things because it's all about procedure and policy and, you know, how you actually see the world and the way you actually see business function in order to be able to make something work, because it doesn't work on its own. It's not magic. It didn't just show up one day working, you know, there's really something behind it.
Big time. So I want to know about like the people you work with, as far as like clients go and stuff. What do you help them do? What do they come to you struggling with? I'm just interested.
Well, they're usually stuck financially, right? So we work with a lot of professionals, a lot of doctors, a tremendous amount of attorneys. The thing about this, right? Attorneys go to school to become really good at law, but they don't know a damn thing about business when they come out. So if they don't go to work for a firm, if they want to start their own company, number one, they're immediately learning how to apply law in a business situation, but they don't know anything about business itself. So one of the issues with professionals is that part of their training when they go to university is to be the best at what they do, right? So there's a lot built into their ego in the way that they think. And they actually find themselves in this self-imposed trap, which is this: they should be able to figure out business. Business shouldn't be that difficult, and yet they can't, and they don't know why. So many of them stay stuck and broke in what it is that what they're doing. But we specifically will market to people in those different industries that are stuck and having a really difficult time. And then we will show, based on the goals that they want to accomplish, we'll show them how to change it. And usually one of the first things is, how do I get past whatever level that I've settled in financially? Many of them were like you. They're losing money every month. They can't pay the bills. They're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. Like it's just nonsense. It's tearing their marriages apart. All the, you know, they're stressed out to the max. They're working 100 hours a week. They're not moving the needle at all. And so then we come in and we quickly evaluate what the problem is, and we start getting them in a track where they're earning more money really quick. Usually that's the first thing. Once they see that they can do that, then we get into the team building, marketing strategies, sales strategies, whatever problem that they're having. I mean, we've worked with almost, I can't tell you how many different businesses. There's not too many businesses we haven't worked with in almost 24 years now. We've worked with professional sports teams, actors, actresses, startup companies, politicians, you name it, across the board, military people, everything.
Is that Pre-Suasion back there?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. It's a good book, guys. Go check that one out. But see.
It took Cialdini 30 years to figure that out from his first book, though. And
Isn't
many
that
of us were
interesting?
doing those things way before he put it into a book.
Unity, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So how do I express this? Because I've gone through what I'm guessing you implement, right? Thinking into results. How do you help people? How do you help people set goals? Or how would you suggest to a listener who's if they're setting goals this way, they shouldn't be doing it. They should be setting goals this way. Like, what's your advice when it comes to setting goals?
Well, the first thing that we do with people is we work with them based on what they really truly want, which is a big deal, because most people set goals based on what they think they can accomplish and not what they really want. Most people are raised that way, right? We're not raised in a world where we can have whatever we want. We do a training called financial set point, and within that training, we teach them that their internal financial set point is usually based on what they need, not what they want, because they hear that growing up. You don't need this, you don't need that. Don't spend more than you need, don't buy more than you need. Can you get away without needing this or that? So everything is on the cheap. And that causes them to view everything that they're doing in their business from that perspective. So they don't know how to use money. They don't know how to leverage money. They don't know how to leverage time, people, information, money in order to be able to do something. So we start very basic with, what do you really want? Give yourself permission to want what you want. Tell us what that is, and then we can show you how to actually create that in their life. Because it's interesting, if a person really taps into their desire, like if you go back to the fundamentals of what like Napoleon Hill talked about in Think and Grow Rich, he said something that was extremely important, and it just passes by most people's consciousness. You have to have a burning desire, a white hot heat to earn money. Well, it's the same way for anything that you want. If you're doing it just because you think that's the thing that you're supposed to do, you won't have the energy or the excitement or the enthusiasm or the ability to problem solve, to be able to get those things if you're just coming from a mediocre kind of lifestyle. That's not how we were raised. If that's going to be your idea, get a job, because it doesn't have any place in business. You will fail miserably in business. So it's about, what do you want? Getting them to express that, to admit it, to give themselves permission to go after it. And then we start to build a structure around that. Whether it's time frame, what do they have to change in their life? What do they have to do? Most of the time, they can't get past the idea that they don't have any money to do the thing that they need to do. And we teach them, you don't need the money to start off. You just don't. You think that you do, but you don't need the money. And then how does that money show up based on the decisions that you make?
Yeah. It's pretty like, it sounds, for people who are listening and they're just like, no, it doesn't, like they're stuck in a different mindset, or like they are working a job or something like that. It's really, really, really easy to think that it won't just show up, but it does. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like I've seen it happen to me too many times and others around me. It's wild how it's you'll be wondering where it was the whole time. You'll be wondering where it was the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's 100% true.
So I'm gonna move. I'll keep going down this path with you here. Why do people know the right thing to do but still don't do it anyways? So what I mean by that, I'll give you an example, is let's say that we all know that we got to drink water, eat healthy, exercise, and do all these things, but why don't we do it? You know what I mean? What's stopping us there?
Well, one of of many things that we know that we should do, we just don't want to. But we don't have the courage to admit that we don't want to, right? So you talk about like eating right and working out, being healthy. A lot of people don't want to say the reason that I don't do this is because I like to eat the wrong foods and I hate working out. That's the real truth when you get to the bottom of it, right? So it's what created that paradigm in your life. It doesn't, like when I worked with Proctor, one of the things that he used to say all the time is, it doesn't matter. You already know what to do. Almost everybody knows what to do. The problem is they're not doing it, but they don't know why. It's because a paradigm in their subconscious mind is not letting them break through. The subconscious mind works in a very interesting way, because the only thing that it has ever been concerned with in its genetic genius, and it is genius because it does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is to keep us alive and to move the next generation forward. It's only concerned with us staying alive and procreating. That's it. So all the information that we gather from the moment of conception until our early 20s designs a pattern that does one very specific thing. It keeps us in survival mode. So if we didn't have anybody teaching us how to live beyond survival mode, that's the only thing we've ever learned. The subconscious, however, does not know that if you break out of that pattern that you won't die, because it was designed to keep you alive. So everything that is a threat that's outside of your subconscious programming, your subconscious thinks, we could die. I don't know how to deal with going against this pattern and moving into something that's unknown. We literally could die. So it's fascinating because even though it's not a life and death decision, your subconscious doesn't know that. So it has a unique way of hijacking the way that you view the world and your behavior to bring you right back to whatever pattern it was that you were designed to live with. That's the truth. So what we do is we help people break past that based on what it is that they want. We literally will show them after we set a goal, find out what they want, find out what problems that they're having. We will have a meeting with them and basically what we do is we elicit their sabotage pattern. Everybody has a unique pattern in which your subconscious mind will hijack you and cause you to stop doing what you're doing. But if you know what the pattern is and you know exactly how it works, you can see it ahead of time. Because if you don't see it ahead of time, it'll hijack you emotionally and you'll rationalize the excuses that you make not to move. So in your perception, it's real. Like those are real reasons why, my marriage is falling apart. I can't afford to do this business anymore. My wife's going to leave me. That's real to that person. It's really happening. They just don't know how to get around it. And what they don't know is that they were already set up to fail based on the paradigm that's controlling that viewpoint and the reaction to that behavior in their life. So we bring all of that out into the open so a person can see it. And then we show them how to get past it as these different paradigms get triggered so that they don't go backwards.
Yeah. So one way that I see this show up in my life, or I've seen it showing up, is like there's many times before I got this business actually kind of took off, but many times in my life where I wanted to start a business and I'd come up with all the reasons why it wouldn't work. You know what I mean? And in my thought, I'm like, I'm just poking holes in it so that I don't go down a path of failure.
Right.
Where what I should have been doing in my knowing now is I should have been looking for all the reasons why it would work.
Exactly.
And
not be afraid of failure, because failure gives you real data to make decisions to change and grow.
Yes.
If you're just playing with ideas in your mind, you're using your imagination to create reasons why it will or will not work. That is not dealing with real life data where you can say, okay, I tried this and it didn't work, but here's what it taught me. So now I can make a different decision based on the reality of the real data that I had. So I can now learn. You know what's fascinating about that is that's how we learned when we were little kids. We failed, right? We weren't born walking.
Right.
And it's the one skill that we learned that nobody gave us any negative feedback around, like saying, oh, forget it, that kid's never going to walk. His legs are too chubby and they're short. He has no balance. He's never going to walk. We were encouraged to do that. But the moment that we stepped outside of anything that was comfortable for our parents that we wanted, where we started to express ourselves, they brought us right back into a very narrow view of how to see the world. And they kind of forced us into being replicas of them. So it's not that we don't have what we need inside to break free and do what we're here to do. It's that we were so influenced by them, we don't pay attention to it anymore. We've denied it in our life. If we can start to accept that again and give ourselves permission to want what we want and get past the shame and guilt that we were given to not do that, most of us would be rock stars.
Definitely. What's something in your life that's held you back? Or maybe what I find is there's always another ceiling, is what I'm noticing, right? I've grown my business to a certain point, and now I have to go and hire these few employees that really will put some financial strain on the business, but it's going to be the same exact thing that allows me to open up and reach the new level. But in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, if I fail, but I can, like you said, it's going to be real feedback, so I'll know what to do the next time, and I can move forward. It's not going to.
Right.
So, like, what's stopping you now? What's the next ceiling for you now? That's like, is there one?
I don't have anything that's stopping me now.
Yeah.
I did, but you have to understand something. When I went into business for myself, I also had to be responsible for decisions that I made that were not healthy decisions before I learned, before I started to wake up and actually learn what to do. And a lot of them had to do with relationships. So I had kids, I got married at a very young age. I had a lot of responsibility there that I had values around that I wasn't willing to change until those kids grew up. Like, I wanted to be a significant part of my children's life. So even when I got divorced the first time, I wanted my kids 2 weeks out of the month, right? So that meant I had to change the way that I was doing business for those 2 weeks. So for many years, I grew. Every year I've been in business, I've grown. But I did not grow as rapidly as I wanted to, or as expansive as I wanted, because I was really focused on doing those things with those kids until they got to be adults. And then once they got to be adults, we expanded rapidly because I didn't have to be with them on a, so involved in their lives, so to speak. But that was important. A lot of people find themselves in situations where they, especially when it comes to relationships and children, many times we do things based on what we think is the right thing. And then we find out that we made a mistake later, but it actually has lifelong responsibility challenges for us, like children, right? Like, those responsibilities don't ever really go away, but they go away on a day-to-day basis 20 years from when you actually, did the act. So how do you want to be a dad or a mom, right? How is that actually important to you? It was very important to me. It was very, very important to me. But I was raised in a dysfunctional house when it came to relationships. I had no idea how to have relationships. And that was probably the largest part of the learning in my life outside of business, was kind of really understanding all the dysfunctional stuff that I had been taught about relationships and really rewiring that so I didn't get involved in another one, because I did it twice. I mean, I literally got into dysfunctional relationships twice because I didn't know how to pick a partner in life, right? I was picking them emotionally. I was picking them based on insecurities that I had that I didn't even know were there. And, when you're doing something like starting a business and you're coming from the place that I started, you can only handle so much change at one time. So you pick things that are the most important at the time and you start working on them systematically until eventually you change most of the things that you're going to change. But now the things that I deal with mostly now are, where can I continue to grow? Like, in different areas of things that I'm excited about and things that I want to do in the world, because now I've got the money to do it. I've got the time to do it. I'm not bogged down by relationships or by children or anything like that. So we're in full go mode with the company, at 24 years. I mean, it's expanding more rapidly than it ever has. We make more money than we ever have. And we're branching out into new things on a consistent basis.
What's your goal now?
For what?
We'll do for your business right now. What's your goal for your business?
Well, I have a goal that's private, but the public goal currently right now is we're getting away from me being the main focus of the company. Mm-hmm. So I have a business partner. Her name is Steph Tuss, and I've made her the CEO of the company. She's also a brilliant marketer, and she's a brilliant strategist. She started off as a student of mine, and we developed a relationship over the years, and both her and her husband work for me. But what we're doing is we're taking the business so we don't get kind of stuck in the trap that, like, Tony Robbins got stuck in, or Bob Proctor kind of got stuck in this trap also, where the product was only them. That's very difficult to turn around if you stay in that place too long. We want the product to be the systems and the strategies itself, the business itself. What does the business do? So that I can walk away from that place, or when it's time for me, if I decide to retire, or if I die, the core of the company can continue to move forward with the right people. So that's the goal right now. The goal right now is to move away from me being the face of the company to life as now being the company, And the strategies and the results that we do as business consultants actually stands on its own. So it's not personality driven so much, so to speak.
That makes sense. It sounds so simple. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm going to rephrase that. I've been working on my language too. It's simple and easy and effortless, right? It's like happen, right? I was going to say it's challenging. It's going to be difficult, but no, it's going to be nice and easy for you. I believe that. I'm sorry if I'm all over the place with the questions here, but
no, you're fine.
It's whatever's coming to my mind. What advice would you give to someone who just started their business, let's say 6 months ago? And what's the best piece of business advice you give to someone just starting out?
Know what you want. Know what you want. What the most astounding thing that I learned right off the bat was how many people were in business that actually did not know what they wanted. They were doing what they thought that they could accomplish, right? Or what they thought that they could pull off, or what they were supposed to do, or what maybe even, I mean, there's people in business that are in business because their parents told them that that's what they should be doing. They never actually made a decision for themselves. I find that every single thing in life gets easier once you know what you want and you give yourself permission to go after it. Number one, it's fun as hell, right? Because you wake up every day and you think to yourself, oh my God, I get to do this. This is not something I have to do. You know, when I was on the forklift, I'd wake up in the morning and I hated what I did. I wake up in the morning now and I love what I do because I get to do it. It's my choice. I've empowered myself to be able to do it. And then set goals for yourself that, most importantly, you're going to stick to. We're really big on this idea because every other way that you approach this, I've never seen anybody make it work. There's always the shoulds, like you should do this, you should lose weight, you should stop drinking, you should work here, you should. Do you want to? Do you want to? Who says you should, right? I mean, Tony Robbins used to say you should all over yourself, right? What do you want to do? So what we say is, you determine what you want. Now, out of what you want, let's create a strategy for you to actually create what you want. However, what is it that you know you're willing to do, no matter what? Because if I tell you, here, you got to do all these different things and you don't want to do them, you'll self-sabotage. What is it you're willing to stick to? What changes do you want to make in your life right now that you're actually willing to stick to? You can get to the other ones later. What are the ones that you're willing to stick to? Because if you pick something that you're not willing to stick to, all you do is struggle, you're miserable, and then you keep having to start over again and you can't figure out why you're not making any progress. And the truth is, let's just say what the truth is, you don't want to do it. That's the truth, right? We can make up all kinds of stories, but when it comes right down to it, you don't want to do it. So instead of dealing with that issue, why don't we just work on what you do want to do? Because the more confidence you build in what you do want to do, the more self-esteem you'll build, and the more you'll be able to address other issues in your life that you simply don't want to do right now. And people make extraordinary progress when you focus on it from that way.
That's good advice. That's good advice. So at the end of these interviews, I always ask my guests a few questions, you know, kind of the same ones for every single guest. It's always interesting to see the different answers. Number one, really, it's an easy question. What's one book everyone should read?
What's one book everybody should read? I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
One is Working with the Law by Raymond Hollywell. The other one is Trust by Alanya Van Zandt.
What's Working with the Law about?
Working with the Law is about how to understand universal law on a practical level and apply it in your life, so it's not just people think it's a mumbo jumbo spiritual idea, but how it actually practically unfolds in your life. It's probably one of the best books written on universal law that I've ever seen. It was something Proctor turned me on to in the mid 90s, and it became a staple for me my whole career. And I teach from it all the time. What I like about it the most is the law of polarity, because the law of polarity states that you can't have a need or a desire for anything without it actually being here. So it doesn't, the first place that we create something is internally. If I build an image in my mind of something, the way to do it has to be here. That's the law. Okay. If I don't have money, the money has to be here, right? Whatever I don't have, I also do have. It's just that I'm only focused on one side of it, so I can't see the other side. The first place that I saw that, which was really weird, was back in the early 90s. Somebody gave me a copy of Think and Grow Rich, and I didn't even understand it. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this guy talking about? I didn't get it because I had no frame of reference for it in my life. So it all seemed, like you were reading Greek or something. But after I had a breakthrough, in the introduction, he talks about the sly disguises of opportunity. And he says that most people miss opportunity basically because they see it as something that it's not. They see it through their perception and their bias. So it doesn't look like an opportunity. And when I read that, I was like, holy shit, that's what I did. That's how I got off the forklift. I saw something that had been around me for 2 years in a different way, and it got me out. It was the door out. So that intrigued me. I just kept studying. Well, when I got to working with the law, and I started to study the law of polarity as Raymond Hollywell was teaching, and I got to understand it much better. And of course, I had an amazing coach who was working with me on it in real life practicality, not just studying it intellectually. Proctor made me do the things that were necessary for me to have the experiences to show that those laws were real, not just something that's an intellectual or just a mind study. It's not just an intellectual knowledge. You can apply every one of those laws in your life, technically, physically, based on how you make decisions and how you work with your business or anything else. So that's fantastic. And Trust by Alanya Van Zandt, it's really about, I'm like, nobody's ever written a book like this. And I don't understand why the thing was not a bestseller, but it's the best book on trust that I've ever read. And she teaches something that is fundamentally missed by most people. And that is this: very few of us are raised with any kind of idea of how to learn to trust ourselves and keep our word with ourselves. Therefore, we don't know how to trust other people. So we don't even know how to evaluate other people based on, should I trust this person or not? And one of the reasons for this is because you have to ask yourself a question. Like, you remember when you're a kid and your parents would say, don't talk to strangers, right? Okay. When did it become okay for you to start to talk to strangers, and how was that information passed on? Because if you really think back, usually it was not done like proactively, like, I'm going to teach you now how to evaluate people that you don't know so that you can determine whether they're people that you should be around. What they would say is, it's okay to talk to this person. They're nice. They're a nice person. And literally thousands of people all over the world that I've talked to about this will say the same damn thing over and over again, that's exactly how that transition took place in their life. Mom and dad in some way said, oh, it's okay to talk to these other people you don't know because they're nice. So they internalize the idea that a nice person is someone that they can trust. And nothing can be further from the truth, because nice is not a value. It's just a way of being. Con men, serial killers are nice. Very dishonest, predatory people usually get close to people in a way that they're nice. So it's not something that should be used as an evaluation to trust anybody.
So how should you?
Based on values, right? What are important values to you? What are the values that you're looking for in everybody else in your life, whether it's a spouse or a partner or a friend or a business associate or a teammate? What are those values? You have to learn what those values are, and then you have to learn to find out if other people have those values.
Cool.
And then, of course, you have accountability and stuff, right? Like,
sure. Yeah. Do they actually do what they say they're going to do? Integrity.
Yeah.
And stuff. Got it. Cool. So the next question, what's the biggest regret of your life? What's the biggest regret that you have?
What is the biggest regret? I'm not a regret person, but I will tell you one of the biggest learning things that I had, and I don't regret it because it taught me a huge lesson. And it was simply this: when I was in business, my 4th year, I had a $5 million embezzlement that somebody that I partnered with took $5 million out of our company and left us with nothing. And the reason that happened was because when I got the contract to sign, it was like a 1-page contract. And I thought to myself, I don't have to pay a lawyer $800 to tell me what this is. And I was going off of the way that I viewed these people, which is like, these are great people. I've always wanted to work with these people. There were things in the contract that a lawyer would have pointed out to me to change that would have not put me in that position. Well, they still would have taken the $5 million, but I also lost my list to them at the same time, my marketing list. I couldn't market to anybody in my list because we combined lists, and it specifically said that in the contract, and I just didn't think it was a big deal at the time. So that cost me $5 million. I literally had to start completely all over again from scratch because I could not work off the list that I had built. It was one of the biggest lessons in business that I ever learned. But I really don't have regrets because every single thing that I used to have regrets about, I've now learned from those things in such a way that it's so invaluable, the lessons that I learned. I wouldn't give up the pain that I went through to learn them. I mean, those things changed my life.
All right, you got to tell me the story. How did you react? What was it like? How you woke up one morning and $5 million was out of the bank account? Like, how the hell did it?
That's pretty much how it happened. I was furious. I was furious and scared at the same time. And after I worked through, you're on the phone with different people. Is this true? How did this happen? What's going on? You're trying to figure all of that out. You're in it's very disorienting because I had tax bills that were due, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I called the attorney, went and sat down with the attorney. He took all the information. He looked into it. A week later, I'm back with him again, and he said, yep. He said, you're absolutely right. They took the $5 million. You're completely in the right. You're not in any wrongdoing in this. He said, if we sue them, you'll win. He said, but this is what you're up against. He said, it'll take you 2 years to get a judgment. It'll probably cost you $250,000 in legal fees and court costs to get that judgment, and you'll never see a dime of this money again. He said, I don't know. He literally said this to me. He goes, David, I don't know why I'm telling you this. He said, because I'm an attorney. I make money off of, trying to do things for you. He said, but listen, everything that you showed me, he's like, you know how to do this. He said, you're young, you've got energy, go back and rebuild it. He said, you'll rebuild it 10 times faster than it took you to get where you were because you know how to do it. He's like, I realize it sucks. He said, chalk it up to a major learning lesson in your life. He said, the longer you're in business, the more you'll value this lesson. He said, I'll take it to court if you want. He said, but the best advice that I can give you is to drop all the anger and the resentment and go out there and put all that energy into rebuilding it. And I went home and I thought about it and I talked to my wife about it and I realized he was right. So I'm like, I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to let this become an excuse for me not to succeed. So I dropped it and I just went out and I completely rebuilt the business and I had it all back within a year. It took a year, but I had it all back within a year.
That's awesome. Talk about perspective, right? You were a forklift driver. How many years later was that?
I was a forklift. Well, so from from 15, 16 years old until I was about 20, I worked at McDonald's. At the end of that, I had 3 jobs. I was an unloader at UPS. I used to work at UPS from 10 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning. I would open up McDonald's at about 5 a.m., work till 11. From there, I would go work at a warehouse at 63rd and Central in Chicago, and I worked there for about 4 hours in the afternoon. I would go home and sleep until about 9 o'clock, get up and go to work at UPS. So that was my routine. From there, I went in the Army. I didn't stay there long because of some extenuating circumstances that I found myself in. But I was active in there for about a year. Then I decided I made a mistake. I didn't want to go down that road. So I came back home. I got a job working for Metropolitan Life Insurance for 2 years. Right in the middle of that, we went through the savings and loan crisis at the end of the 80s. I lost all the policies that I had written. And so I went from making a decent income where we could take care of ourselves to be completely broke. Again, because nobody was buying life insurance. Everybody was canceling their policies. I wasn't able to build a book of business to sustain through a downtime. So then I went and the only job I could find was on the forklift. So I did that for 2 years before I finally got that turned around.
Yeah. So when did you lose the 5 million? From you were at the forklift driving, like
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. So I got off the forklift in 1993. the 5 million, I'm sorry, happened in 2004.
Yeah, so like it was about 10 years later.
Yeah.
10 years later, after changing your attitude, you had 5 million to lose.
Yeah.
You know, like put that in perspective to someone who goes to school for 4, gets their masters, and so like,
Right.
imagine what you can do in an actual like 8 to 10 years, like perspective. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right? And then on top of it, I mean, the fact that the next year you got it all back.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm also interested. Did you ever get to talk to that partner?
Yeah. I had a conversation with him. I had a conversation with. I'm not able to tell you what happened because we decided to disclose it based on an agreement with them. But basically, the reason that they did it was because somebody stole a bunch of money from them, and they were using that money to pay that off and get themselves out of trouble.
Got it. How quickly did you learn that? Like, because in my mind, I'm like, I wake up, my business partner just took 5 million from me. I'd be like on the phone, like trying to scream and yell at them, and be furious and stuff. Did that ever happen while you're like in that period of time?
That never actually. There was no screaming and yelling.
You just called your lawyer right away, and
yeah. Well, once I was certain what happened, because there were 3 of us that were in business together.
Yeah.
And the way that it worked was we had a central office that collected the money, credit cards, did all the business, all that stuff. Well, when I needed money moved out of our joint account into my account, we would just call up and say, we transfer this much money over. And one day I called and they go, you got to talk to so-and-so. I said, what are you talking about? Just put this much money in my account. No, you got to talk to so-and-so. And I got on the phone with so-and-so and they go, there's no money. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no money. There's no money. He said, I can't get to it right now, but I'll tell you about it later. So then I got on the phone with the other business partner and I'm like, and they didn't know either. I was the first one to find out. Jeez. So we went through, found out what happened, but yeah, that's how it happened. That's how it went down.
Interesting. Yeah, I was just so curious.
And they did get to the point where they weren't answering any phone. Like, I mean, it was like, they just completely, they stopped answering emails. They stopped answering phone calls. It did go down that route.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm like, not many people are going through that, like it's
right.
It's interesting. All right. This is gonna be the last question, and then we'll get into where people can go follow you and learn more. So last one, you get to go back in time. You can go back in time at any age, right? You can go to any age that you want to go back to. You got to go back as yourself now and go talk to your younger self. But you only get 3 sentences and then you disappear. What are those 3 sentences? And I always leave it up to the guests if they want to explain why they chose those 3 sentences.
That's a good one. I've never had this question before. You get to go back in time at any point in time and tell my younger self 3 sentences.
What age would you go back to, and what are the 3 sentences?
What age would I go back to? I would probably go back to the age of 13, when I was 13 years old. One of the scariest points in my life was when my parents got divorced. We ended up with my mom, and my mom was not doing well because of it. I probably would say something like, everything is going to turn out fine, but learn to be responsible. That's probably what I would tell myself.
Mm-hmm. You have any 2 more sentences out of that?
2 more sentences out of it? I wouldn't want to say too much.
Okay. Very interesting. This is the first time I've had someone only come up with 1 sentence. Normally they're rambling on paragraphs. I have to cut them, pull them in.
See, because anytime I think to myself about going back and doing something like this, I think to myself, would I have gone down the same road, or would I set myself up to be like a responsible person working for somebody else for the rest of my life? Like, how would I have viewed that at a young age? It gets kind of tricky, right? Sure. So I was always entrepreneurial. I just didn't recognize that in myself, and nobody else did either. No, I think I would leave it there. I really do think I would leave it there. I think I would just assure myself that everything's going to be okay. I wouldn't want to tell myself too much, but I would definitely say be responsible, because I had a major issue with that as a kid. You know, I was running away from everything. I did not know, I had nobody, especially a male figure in my life at that age, teaching me responsibility. So I don't think it would have interrupted too many things. And I think that it would have made some very difficult situations easier if I had been more responsible, if I had been more mature. I was really immature.
Interesting. Cool. Well, David, man, this is awesome. I mean, I have questions about your background I didn't get to ask, but like, yeah, this is really great. I hope that well, if you're still listening, you stuck around for about 50 minutes, almost an hour. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Where can people go follow you? Because I'm sure you've got knowledge out there for free on social and.
Well, they can go to our podcast, right? The Successful Mind Podcast. Look up David Neagle, the Successful Mind Podcast. We do a tremendous amount of teaching on there for free. Like there's no charge. So that's a really great place for them to learn more without having any kind of obligation, to really kind of see if that's something that's in their path. Or they can go to our website, davidneagle.com.
Awesome. Beautiful, guys. Go check that out. Leave him a review and leave me one too, so we get us up in the ranks and get this information out to more people. And thank you so much for being on here one last time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.